Fading Echo is one of the games that we played here on Bickering Nerds back during Next Fest. And since then, it's been one I couldn't wait to get my hands on and play it when it fully released. Well, the day is finally here and the game is now available. And I want to thank the developers for sending us a key to the game for the purposes of this review. And right off the bat, the full game gives everything I loved about the demo, but more of it. Fading Echo is an action hack and slash game with puzzles to solve to expand the world. You play as one who has the ability to shapeshift into a small orb, taking over different elements like water, toxic goo, and fire. And she'll use these abilities to help save Corel, a land that is being plagued by a corruption. In order to save it, she'll need to travel deep inside areas of the Corel in order to regain a flow of energy to its etheric intelligence, or AI, called Vellum, that is working with one's mother in order to save the Corel, with more details of the corruption and other people involved appearing as the game progresses. Right off the bat though, one of the details that caught my attention for this game is the way that it presents its story, with the cutscenes being fully rendered but presented like a comic book, where the characters stand still and text boxes appear like they're in a comic book with framing and everything. But elements such as their hair and clothing still moving. And even motion or action in these scenes is represented by the same character showing up multiple times. It's a unique way to tell the story and I love it. And with the humor that this game has, it just adds to these scenes. Also with scenes introducing new characters and monsters. Every time a new monster is introduced, they get these little flashcards that list their likes and give them a little tagline. Like the Chickosaurus, who's just a creature that rams into you at high speeds in a single direction. Who likes picking a direction, high speed mistakes, and trusting the vibes. Which, while funny, do give you some details about the creature as well before you go up against them. And these little bits of humor also come into the rest of the game too, with the dialogue in these little radio spots and the cutscenes I mentioned before. But the game does still get pretty tense at times. Then you have the gameplay, which I also really liked. You can control one in a fully 3D world, where you come across monsters and puzzles. The combat brings you face to face with all kinds of different creatures, each one having an element that you can control that has a weakness to another element. So pushing a water-based monster into the toxic goo will weaken them, allowing you to do extra damage to them, where you can then hack and slash through them. Or if you want, you can just attack them and dodge anytime they attack in order to survive, and slowly whittle down their health. Either way you choose to go, the combat is pretty fun. But at times, I just found myself zipping past enemies when I could in order to get to the next puzzle, which is where, in my opinion, the major component of the game is. Here, you'll need to use the different elements you have to bring these cubes to a stand, where they can then open doors and power the world around you. But you can't just carry these cubes. You need to grab them when you're in an elemental form in order to bring them back to the stand. Which at the beginning of the game is pretty simple. You grab the cube and bring it over to the stand. But as the game progresses, it starts to implement the different abilities of the different elements. Like how water can do a basic jump and dash, but the toxic or green goo will allow you to jump higher. And then the fire will allow you to burn barriers or turn into a mist to float across large open areas. Which adds some complexity to the puzzles and how you'll use these elements. Especially since once you use one of the other elements, they're gone unless you can find a puddle or orb to regain them, with water being your basic element you have most of the time. Then later in the game, you learn other abilities, like the Corruption, which allows you to set save points that you can return to, allowing you to move freely and then go back to a certain spot that would be out of reach. All of these combined make for some very interesting puzzles, and quite often ones I had to work through in order to solve, especially when they add in these gates that will block you from bringing items through it, be it the cubes or the elemental orbs that will allow you to change into a different element, requiring you to have to find ways to work around these gates. And in some puzzles, requiring you to do multiple layers of setup to complete them, with placing pools of the elements around you that you can grab during the puzzle, with these puzzles being scattered around 3 different areas you can tackle in any order you want, with the final area unlocking when you complete all 3 of the previous areas, allowing you to choose to complete an area fully, or if you're having trouble with a puzzle, you can go to the next area and come back to it with a fresh mind later, which was something I had to do a couple times when I was stuck figuring out what to do for the next puzzle. I will say though, one part of the game that did confuse me was accessing further puzzles in an area. Once you open the first flow in an area, it tells you that you can now explore more of that area to open more flows back to the main base. But for a while, I originally had some trouble figuring this part out, and it would end up backtracking through the puzzle that I already solved, trying to figure out where to go next with the alternate path, only for me to realize I had to go back through the original flow in order to get to this halfway room that they would open into. For me, I saw finishing the flow as going back to the main base so you could start somewhere new. I didn't expect to have to go back through that same flow in order to get to the next area. Especially since every time you get a new flow going back to the main base, you can upgrade your moves or unlock new ones. So I spend more time than I would like to admit just trying to figure out how to get to the new puzzles. So if you're planning to play Fading Echo, just keep this in mind before you jump into it. But maybe I'm the only person who had this issue and it was obvious to everyone else. Another thing I wasn't quite a fan of too was the way they present the story during the gameplay. Throughout the levels, there are these little radio spots where you can talk to different characters. But in order to listen to them, you had to stay within this circle. If you leave the circle, the dialogue just cuts out. So if you want to listen to it, you had to go back to the circle and then start the conversation all over again. This was something I wasn't a fan of during the demo of the game. And in the full game, I had the same thoughts on it, where I would want to hear these story elements, but in order to do so, I'd have to stand awkwardly in the middle of the map in order to hear it out, before I could continue with the stage and go to the next puzzle. But honestly, it's really the only gripe I had with the game during my playthrough of it. I had a lot of fun playing Fading Echo. And for anyone that enjoys combat-filled puzzle games, it's for sure one to check out. The comedy, story, combat, and puzzles are all in a perfect place here. And the style of this game stands out right away. So if you want to check out Fading Echo, all the links to do so can be found in the description below. Have you already checked out Fading Echo? I want to know what your thoughts were on it in the comments. Or even if you intend to check this one out in the future. And if you made it this far, hit that subscribe button and check out some of our other videos here on Bickering Nerds. Until next time, this is Brad with the Bickering Nerds.